We wish Vanessa were our only child. That's what my father said. At dinner, in front of everyone. That night, something inside me broke. Quietly, completely. For 34 years, I'd been their fixer, their invisible accountant, the daughter who kept the lights on while they praised my sister like she hung the moon. But those 9 words, they were the last straw. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just smiled and decided to show them exactly what life looked like without me. 6 months later, their empire crumbled. Not because I destroyed it, but because I finally stopped saving it. This is my story. Yeah, the quiet kind of revenge that no one sees coming. If you're new here, make sure to hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell because this one's not just another Reddit revenge story. It's about love, family, betrayal, and the moment you realize that walking away is the loudest revenge of all. They say every family has a favorite child. Mine never bothered to hide it. It was a Friday night in Chicago, cold enough for your breath to fog up the restaurant window, but not cold enough to numb the kind of sting that night left on my heart. We were celebrating my parents' 35th wedding anniversary at a fancy place in the Loop, the kind with chandeliers that looked like frozen waterfalls and wine that cost more than my rent. My mother, Margaret, was radiant in pearls. My father, Richard, was all smiles and confidence, proud of the family he believed he'd built. And then there was Vanessa, my sister, their golden girl, their living proof that good breeding pays off. She sat across from me in a cream dress, hair glossy, smile perfectly rehearsed. I was the other daughter, the practical one, the quiet one, the one who kept the family store alive while they bragged about Vanessa's flair for leadership. I tried to focus on the food. Maybe if I kept my eyes on the roasted salmon, I could survive another night of being invisible. But then it began. Vanessa, my uncle said, leaning forward with his drink. I heard you're already a regional manager. Incredible, you've always had that spark. She gets it from her father, Mom said, laughing, her hand resting on Dad's arm. Dad nodded proudly. She's always had a mind for business. The table hummed with agreement. I smiled politely, cutting into my food, feeling the familiar burn in my chest. I had spent years sending them money, $600 every month, to keep that same family business afloat. I'd fixed their books, talked down angry vendors, and worked late nights to untangle their debts. But I never got the applause, not even a nod. Still, I thought, maybe tonight could be different. Maybe just this once they'd see me. When the laughter died down, I cleared my throat gently. I've been reviewing your store's finances, I said, forcing a calm tone. If you switch suppliers and streamline inventory, you could save thousands a year. I even drafted a plan. Oh, numbers again, Mom interrupted with a laugh. Sweetie, don't bore everyone. Vanessa smirked. Yeah, Lauren, relax. I've already got a summer sale planned. Real strategies, not spreadsheets. The table chuckled. My fingers tightened around my napkin under the table. The humiliation burned through me like fire, but I didn't flinch. Then my father stood up. Let's have a toast, he said, raising his glass, his voice cutting through the chatter. To 35 years of marriage, love, and he turned to Vanessa, smiling with pride. To our pride and joy. He paused. Then, with an easy laugh, he added, honestly, we wish Vanessa was our only child. The laughter stopped. The sound of forks and glasses faded into a vacuum. I felt the words hit like a slap, cold and final. My stomach twisted. My throat tightened. Vanessa's smirk didn't fade. If anything, it deepened, like she'd been waiting for this moment. Mom didn't stop him. She didn't gasp or correct him. She just took a sip of wine and looked away. Everyone's eyes turned to me and waiting for the meltdown, waiting for the tears. But I didn't give them that. I pushed my chair back, the scrape of the wood slicing through the silence. I stood, adjusting my coat. And with a steady voice, I said, "As you wish, Dad." Then I turned and walked out, my heels clicking against the hardwood floor, each step quieter, calmer, and somehow louder than anything I'd ever said. Outside, the Chicago air hit my face like a slap. The city lights blurred through my tears, but my mind was razor sharp. That night, something in me broke, and something else began to wake up. For the first time in my life, I wasn't their daughter. I was their consequence. By Monday morning, the silence was over. My phone was a battlefield. 37 missed calls, 8 voicemails, 4 text chains that read like a mixture of guilt and accusation. "Dad, you're being ridiculous. You can't just abandon your family." "Mom, we were all emotional that night. Don't take it personally." "Vanessa, if you think you're hurting us, you're just embarrassing yourself." I ignored every one of them. The first voicemail I listened to was from Dad. He started calm, the way he always did when he wanted control. Greater than, "Lauren, this is childish. We can talk about this like adults." But halfway through, his tone shifted, clipped, cold. "You're being ungrateful after everything we've done for you. Everything they'd done for me." I laughed out loud at that one. They never realized that emotional neglect can sound polite. That love, when one sided, starts to feel like servitude. By Tuesday, the messages changed. Mom's tone softened into her trademark guilt trip. "Sweetheart, you know your father didn't mean it. He just phrased it wrong. He's stressed. We can't manage the store alone." Then she added, "You're our rock. Vanessa can't do what you do." I stared at that line for a long time. Vanessa can't do what you do. Exactly. And that's why they'd use me for years. I didn't respond. But Vanessa, she didn't stop there. She took the war online. Wednesday morning, I woke up to 3 notifications on Facebook. Vanessa's new post read, "Some people think they're indispensable, but when family needs them, they vanish. Sad how jealousy makes people selfish." My stomach dropped. She didn't mention me by name, but she didn't have to. The comments said it all. Cousin Lisa. "Are you okay, Vanessa?" Aunt Carol. "You've always been the responsible one. Don't let anyone drag you down." Even Mom had liked the post. The next day, Vanessa doubled down, posting a photo of herself at the store with the caption, "Picking up the pieces." Some of us do what needs to be done. I stared at it, hands trembling, not from sadness, from something sharper. Rage. I could have replied, could have posted proof, screenshots of my bank transfers, emails showing how I saved their failing business, tax forms I'd filed in their name. But I didn't. That would have given them what they wanted, a spectacle. Instead, I did something worse. Nothing. I deleted Facebook, muted the family chat, and turned off my ringer. The quiet was intoxicating. The days that followed were strange. I'd wake up expecting an email from Mom, a call from Dad, some manipulation disguised as concern. But there was only silence. By the weekend, I started to see it for what it was, panic. They weren't worried about me, they were worried without me. Without my $600 a month, vendors started calling them directly. Without my spreadsheets, the late fees piled up. Without my voice, the entire system I'd built for them began to creak and groan. I knew the collapse was coming. I just didn't expect it to start this fast. Saturday evening, Vanessa posted again. Greater than, "It's sad when people turn their backs on family." But karma always finds its way, I smirked. She was right about that. Karma does find its way, and I was done waiting for it. I was about to become it. When I flew back to Chicago, the air felt different, colder, thinner, almost clean. It had only been a few days since I'd sat in my grandfather's sunlit living room, but something inside me had shifted. For the first time in years, I wasn't anxious. I wasn't walking on emotional eggshells. I felt like I'd stepped out of a cage I didn't even realize I'd been locked in. My phone was still flooded with messages, of course. Mom, your father isn't well. You've stressed him out. Dad, you can't just disappear like this. Vanessa, you're acting crazy. Everyone's talking. I didn't answer a single one. Back at my apartment in Lincoln Park, I unpacked slowly, deliberately. I deleted their numbers. I even created a new email address for work so their guilt trips would go straight to spam. And for the first time in years, the silence wasn't lonely, it was peaceful. But peace didn't last long. By the end of the week, the cracks began to show. It started with a call from one of my old vendor contacts, a guy named Reggie who'd always been polite, professional, and discreet. Hey, Lorne, he said cautiously. Just checking. Are you still handling the payments for Reed's Boutique? I frowned. No, not anymore. Why? He exhaled. Because your dad's checks bounced. Twice I leaned back in my chair, all ready. Yeah, he said, almost apologetic. Hate to say it, but we're suspending shipments until they clear it up. I thanked him, hung up, and stared at the skyline outside my window. The city glittered like 1,000 tiny lies, beautiful from a distance, rotting up close. Within days, more news trickled in. Their main supplier in Naperville froze their account. The landlord threatened to raise rent after a missed payment. The IRS sent a letter about delayed quarterly taxes, the ones I'd warned them about months ago. And through it all, I said nothing. Vanessa, meanwhile, was still online, spinning her little PR fairy tale, posting pictures at the store, pretending everything was fine, pretending she was the hero cleaning up my mess. But the cracks in her mask started showing too. One night, a mutual friend texted me a screenshot from Facebook, a heated comment thread under one of Vanessa's posts. Aunt Carol had written, Lauren helped you for years, maybe show some gratitude? Vanessa replied, she's bitter and jealous. I had to cut her out for my mental health. That one stung. Not because it was cruel, but because it was cowardly. She was rewriting history and people were believing it. Still, I stayed quiet. Grandpa's words echoed in my head. You don't fight fire with fire. You just take away the oxygen. So I did. I ignored every post, every message, every whispered rumor. Because while they were busy screaming for attention, their little empire, built on my time, my money, my silence, was collapsing beneath them. By the end of the month, I heard the store had missed 2 supplier payments, the rent, and a shipment deadline. The accountant quit. The grand summer sale. Vanessa bragged about online never happened. They were running out of oxygen, and I wasn't going to lift a finger to save them. It started like a rumor, quiet, almost invisible, and then it spread like wildfire. 3 months after I walked away, their store, Reed's Boutique and More, was barely hanging on. Suppliers cut ties. The landlord was threatening eviction. The last check they wrote to the marketing agency had bounced so badly it made the local business bulletin. I didn't have to dig for updates. People sent them to me. Hey, an old coworker texted, is your dad okay? I heard the store's closing. Another message came from Reggie, my old vendor contact. Greater than, hate to say it, but they're blacklisted across half the district. Shame. You kept that place running. I stared at my phone for a long time, rereading that line. You kept that place running. Exactly. And now they were learning what it meant to lose the one person they never valued. But money trouble was only the beginning. Vanessa started posting vague, panicked updates on Facebook. People are so fake. You think you can trust family? Then, I can't believe how ungrateful some people are. Karma always comes around. It was ironic, really. She'd used social media to humiliate me. Now it was turning on her. Within days, our aunts, cousins, and even old family friends began commenting. Politely at first, then brutally honest. Aunt Carol wrote, Lauren kept that business alive. You owe her an apology. Someone else shared screenshots of my old payment transfers, $600 a month, the receipts I'd sent years ago. It spread. Suddenly, the comment section became a battlefield. Vanessa tried to delete her posts, but it was too late. People remembered the anniversary dinner. They remembered my father's cruel toast. Word traveled fast through our family, faster than wildfire. Dad called again, this time with desperation in his voice. Lauren, you need to fix this. Your mother's falling apart. The family's turning against us. I almost laughed. You told me you wished Vanessa was your only child, I said quietly. Congratulations. You got your wish. I hung up. He didn't call again. By late fall, the inevitable happened. A family friend texted me a photo. The storefront boarded up. A for lease sign taped crookedly to the window. That sign looked like a tombstone. Vanessa's reputation collapsed right alongside it. Her regional manager position had been padded by Dad's business connections, and when those dried up, so did her credibility. She was fired within weeks. I later learned that Mom had taken out a second mortgage to keep the business running after I left. And when the store folded, so did their house. They moved into a small apartment on the west side. Dad picked up warehouse shifts. Mom tried selling jewelry online. Vanessa bounced between retail jobs. None of them reached out again. Not once. The silence was louder than any apology. One night, I scrolled through their old posts, the fake smiles, the family dinners, the celebrations. Every photo felt like a lie finally exposed. I didn't feel triumph. I felt free. Grandpa's voice echoed again. You don't fight fire with fire. You just take away the oxygen, and just like that, and they suffocated on their own smoke. The envelope came on a gray Thursday morning. No warning, no phone call. Just a thick cream envelope stamped with the name of my grandfather's lawyer, W.D. Hargrove, Clearwater, Florida. For a moment, I couldn't open it. My hands just hovered there, trembling, because I already knew. Grandpa was gone. I finally tore the seal open. Inside was a letter, his handwriting as steady and careful as always. Lauren, if you're reading this, I've already taken my last walk along the shore. Don't be sad. I had the life I wanted. And now I get to leave you with the peace you earned. I've made one last change. The will remains as it is, but there's something else. A trust in your name. You'll find the details inside. Greater than don't think of it as inheritance. Think of it as a thank you for standing tall when others crawled. Greater than P.S. Go see the house on Bayshore. I left you something in the study. Greater than Grandpa Walter. The words blurred through my tears. I didn't cry for the money or the gesture. I cried because I'd lost the only person who ever truly understood me. I took the next flight to Tampa. The little beachfront house looked exactly the same as the day I left it. The weathered blue shutters, the rocking chair still creaking in the wind. The ocean behind it shimmered in that same impossible turquoise. It was like time hadn't dared move without him. Inside, everything smelled like cedar and salt air. His slippers were still by the door. I walked to the study, heart pounding. On the desk was a small wooden box, hand carved and sanded smooth. On top, a note, greater than, for when you finally forgive yourself for caring too long. Inside were three things: a silver pocket watch, his favorite, the one he wound every morning, a check from the trust, more money than I'd ever seen in my life, and an old photograph. It was of me at 12 years old, sitting on the beach next to him, a plastic shovel in my hand and sand all over my face. He'd written on the back in fading ink, greater than, you've been digging others out your whole life. Time to build your own castle. I sat there for a long time, the sound of waves echoing through the open window. For the first time in years, the tears that came weren't from anger or hurt, they were from release. Before I left, I placed the photo on the mantel and whispered, "Thank you." When I returned to Chicago, the trust funds came through, a quiet fortune, but I didn't spend it on revenge or luxury. I used it to start something new, a financial consulting firm for small, struggling family businesses. Ones like my parents, except this time I chose who I helped. And that was the real twist. I hadn't destroyed them. I'd simply stopped saving them. Grandpa had just given me the tools to build something better. When I got home that night, the city was asleep. But my mind wasn't. The hum of my apartment fridge was the only sound, steady and cruel. I dropped my purse on the counter, kicked off my heels, and sat in the dark with nothing but the echo of my father's words running on repeat in my head. Greater than, we wish Vanessa was our only child. I used to think pain came in waves, something that hit, hurt, and passed. But this wasn't a wave. This was a flood. Years of trying to earn their love, crashing all at once. I stared at the old family photo on my bookshelf, the one from 2009 at Navy Pier. Vanessa was in the middle, laughing, my parents flanking her like proud royalty. I was in the corner, half cropped out, holding the camera remote. Even then, I'd been invisible. I'd always convinced myself to stay, to help. They're just stressed. They love you in their own way. Family is family. But those words, that toast, killed every excuse I had left. I opened my laptop and stared at the spreadsheet I'd built for their store. Rows of unpaid invoices, tax warnings, shipment delays. I'd spent countless nights fixing their messes while they posted smiling pictures of Vanessa's brilliant business ideas. And I realized something. Without me, they were screwed. It wasn't pride that filled me, it was clarity. I grabbed my phone, opened the family group chat. The Grants. The name made me sick. Mom had added the heart emoji years ago, right after Vanessa's promotion. I typed slowly, my thumbs trembling, but every word felt like a hammer striking steel. I'm done helping with the store. No more money, no more advice. You'll have to handle things yourselves from now on. Good luck, I read it 3 times. Then I hit send. The message delivered with a soft chime. So small, so harmless. Yet I knew it was the loudest thing I'd ever said. Within minutes, my phone lit up. Mom. Lauren, what's this about? You're just upset. Dad. We need to talk. Call me now. Vanessa. Wow, drama much? I turned the phone face down on the table and let it vibrate itself to death. I didn't owe them a word. By midnight, I had 14 missed calls, 6 voicemails, and a long email from Mom titled, "Please don't do this to us." I didn't open it. Instead, I opened my banking app and canceled the automatic $600 transfer that had been leaving my account every month for the last 4 years. Watching that confirmation pop up felt better than therapy. For the first time in years, I wasn't anxious about what they needed. I wasn't trying to prove my worth. I wasn't their safety net. I sat back on the couch, the city lights spilling across my floor, and whispered to myself, greater than let's see how they do without me. It wasn't anger anymore, like it was peace, sharp and cold. That night, I didn't dream. I didn't cry. I just slept, like someone who'd finally stopped bleeding. A week after the anniversary dinner, I booked a one-way ticket to Tampa. It wasn't impulsive, it was instinct. I needed distance from Chicago, from the messages, from the noise, but mostly I needed clarity, and there was only one person I trusted to give it to me, my grandfather, Walter. Grandpa Walter wasn't like the rest of them. He'd built his own life from nothing. A Korean War vet who started buying small rental homes along Florida's Gulf Coast back in the 70s. Quiet man, sharp eyes. He'd always said, family doesn't mean blind loyalty, kiddo. It means respect. That phrase used to confuse me. Now I understood it. The flight landed just after 3 p.m. The humid air hit me like a wall the moment I stepped out of Tampa International. Salt, sun, and the faint smell of rain. Nothing like Chicago's cold asphalt air. I rented a car and drove down the narrow coastal road toward Clearwater, the sea glittering to my right like molten glass. Grandpa was waiting on his porch when I arrived, rocking slowly in a faded wooden chair. He smiled when he saw me, that slow, knowing grin that could break your heart if you hadn't seen it in a while. Lauren, he said, standing, you look like someone who's been carrying too much. I hugged him tighter than I meant to. You could say that. We sat inside with sweet tea and an old fan buzzing between us. The house smelled like cedar and the ocean. When I started talking, I didn't stop for nearly an hour. I told him everything. The years of being second best, the store I'd practically run while Vanessa got the praise, the $600 a month I'd sent them just to keep the lights on. And then I told him about the dinner. Dad's toast, Mom's silence, Vanessa's smirk. Every word came out like glass in my throat. When I was done, Grandpa didn't speak right away. He just stared at the floorboards, jaw tight. Then, in a voice I'd never heard from him before, low, dangerous, he said that to you? In public? I nodded. He rubbed his temples, muttering, that boy learned nothing. Then I showed him Vanessa's posts, the screenshots I'd saved before deleting Facebook. He scrolled slowly, eyes narrowing, lips pressed tight. That isn't family, he said finally. That's exploitation dressed up as love. He stood, walked to his old roll-top desk, and pulled out a thin folder. When he came back, his voice was steady. I've been meaning to revise my will. I was going to split it evenly between your father, his sister, and you kids. But after this, no, you're the only one who deserves a damn thing. My heart stuttered. Grandpa, you don't have to. He cut me off with a wave. I do. You've carried them long enough. They won't get another cent from me. He called his lawyer that same afternoon. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, the papers were drafted. Everything, the rental properties, the lake cabin, the land, would go to me. A portion would go to charity. I watched him sign his name with a shaking hand. When he looked up, his eyes were soft again. You don't fight fire with fire, Lauren. You just take away the oxygen. I didn't fully understand what he meant then. But I would soon. 3 weeks after I got back from Florida, I received a thick white envelope in the mail. The return address stopped me cold. W.D. Hargrove, attorney at law, Clearwater, Florida. Inside was a single letter and a copy of my grandfather's new will. I must have read it 3 times before it sank in. Every property, every account, every investment, mine. He'd left a small portion to a local veterans charity, but the rest was under my name. There was even a handwritten note at the bottom in his tight, deliberate script. Greater than Lauren, greater than the measure of love isn't blood, it's respect. You've shown it when others haven't. Grandpa. For a long time, I just sat there staring at those words. I hadn't asked for any of it. I hadn't expected it. But it wasn't about the money. It was about validation. Someone finally saw me. Really saw me. That quiet victory didn't last long. 2 days later, I got the first call from Mom. Lauren, she started, trying to sound casual. We just heard from your grandfather's lawyer. Her voice had that sugar sweet tone she used when she wanted something. I think there's been a misunderstanding. No misunderstanding, I said flatly. Sweetheart, she continued, her voice cracking. Your father's upset. We've all made mistakes. You don't want to punish us like this? I'm not punishing anyone, I said. I just stopped fixing things that weren't mine to fix. There was silence. Then her tone hardened. Do you have any idea what you're doing to this family? I smiled to myself. Yeah, finally giving it a chance to stand on its own, I hung up before she could respond. By the weekend, Dad called from a different number. Lauren, you tell that old man he's out of line, he barked. That property's family legacy. Exactly, I said, and he decided which family earned it. He cursed, said something about lawyers and ungrateful children, then hung up. Vanessa was the last to reach out. Her text came at 1:14 a.m. Drunk or desperate? Maybe both. Did you seriously manipulate Grandpa into cutting us out? You're sick, I didn't reply. I didn't need to. The truth was doing all the talking now. By the end of the month, I got another letter, this time from Grandpa himself. Short, simple, typed on his old Remington. Greater than they called me, all of them. Begged, yelled, guilted. Didn't matter. I told them, you made your bed. Take care of what's yours now. Don't look back. That night, I poured a glass of wine and looked out over the Chicago skyline. The same skyline I used to stare at when I felt invisible. Now it felt like mine. Down in Florida, Grandpa had just rewritten a lifetime of family politics with one signature. And up here, in this cold city full of glass and noise, I finally felt what power tasted like. It wasn't loud, it wasn't vengeful, it was calm, clean, final. 6 months after the store closed, I stopped waking up angry. For the first time in my adult life, my mornings belonged to me. No guilt, no late night calls about urgent financial crises, no more texts from Mom asking for just one more favor. Just me, coffee, and sunlight filtering through my apartment window. Freedom had a quiet sound, like the hum of the city before dawn. My focus shifted to work. As a financial manager, I'd built a solid career, but now I poured myself into it like it was therapy. Long hours, sharp negotiations, cleaner spreadsheets than I'd ever made for my parents' shop. And it paid off. Literally. One afternoon, my boss, Karen, called me into her office at the downtown firm on West Monroe Street. Her face was unreadable at first, and for a moment, I braced myself for bad news. Then she smiled. You saved the Holloway account, she said. The client was about to pull out until you spotted that discrepancy. I want you leading our next project. Senior manager position. For a heartbeat, I couldn't move. Then I felt it. That quiet sense of validation that I'd been chasing my whole life. Not from my family, not from guilt, but from my own damn work. I walked home that evening past the Chicago River, the lights flickering on the water. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible. I felt real. That weekend, I met Emily, my best friend, at our favorite cafe on North Halsted. We'd met in grad school, bonded over burnt coffee and bad bosses. She listened as I told her about the promotion, her eyes lighting up. You see, she said, grinning, you were never the problem. You were just surrounded by people too small to see your worth. Simple words, but they sank deep. Later that year, I met Ethan, a structural engineer with kind eyes and an easy laugh. We met at a networking event I didn't even want to attend. He spilled wine on my blouse and apologized like he'd committed a crime. By our second date, we were already joking about it. He wasn't flashy. He didn't try to fix me. He just listened. One night while walking along Navy Pier, I told him everything. The dinner, the betrayal, the silence afterward. I braced myself for judgment, pity, something. Instead, he said quietly, they didn't deserve you. But I'm glad they made room for someone who does. That one sentence undid something inside me. Over time, life stopped feeling like survival. It started feeling like choice. My apartment became a home filled with laughter. Emily's puns, Ethan's dry humor, the sound of me finally breathing without fear. Every now and then, I'd get updates about my parents through distant cousins, missed rent payments, Vanessa's failed jobs, mom's bitter remarks at family gatherings. But I didn't flinch anymore. I wasn't their scapegoat or their safety net. I was the proof that walking away isn't cruel. Sometimes it's the only way to live. I thought that was the end of it. Until one morning, 6 months later, a certified letter arrived from Florida. Grandpa had passed away. And with that letter came the final twist I never saw coming. It's been 2 years since that dinner. 2 years since my father's toast carved a permanent line in the sand between us. I used to replay that moment in my head, the clinking glasses, the laughter dying, his voice saying, we wish Vanessa was our only child. For months, it echoed like a curse. Now it feels more like punctuation. The end of one story, the beginning of another. My life doesn't look grand from the outside. I still live in the same apartment in Lincoln Park, though it's warmer now, softer. My consulting firm is growing slowly but steadily. I work with people who remind me of what family should mean. Small shop owners who care, couples trying to save their dream businesses, young women building something from scratch. Every success story feels like a piece of me being stitched back together. Because that's what my revenge became. Not a fire meant to burn them, but a life that thrived without their smoke. Sometimes I hear about them. Vanessa moved to Milwaukee for a retail job she hates. She's quiet on social media now. Mom and dad rent a cramped apartment above a dry cleaner. I've heard they fight often. A cousin told me they tried reaching out to Grandpa's lawyer after his passing. Something about contesting the will. The attorney shut it down immediately. They didn't even show up to his funeral. Maybe out of guilt. Maybe pride. I didn't need either from them. The day I stood at his grave, I brought the pocket watch he left me. I wound it once and held it against my chest, listening to the ticking. It sounded like forgiveness. Steady, patient, earned. Rest easy, Arden whispered. I'm okay now. And I was. I am. Ethan and I live together now. He still makes terrible coffee, still sings off key when he thinks I'm asleep. On weekends, we walk by Lake Michigan, hand in hand, watching the sun sink behind the skyline. He always teases me for checking the time on that old watch. One evening, as the wind whipped across the pier, he asked softly, do you ever miss them? I thought about it. Really thought. Then I said, No, I miss who I thought they could be, but I don't miss the people they chose to become. He nodded, squeezing my hand. That's fair. And it was. Sometimes revenge isn't a scream, it's silence. It's standing so tall, the people who tried to break you have to look up to see you. I didn't destroy my family. They did that all on their own. All I did was stop bleeding for people who never would have done the same for me. Now, every morning when I wind that pocket watch, I hear Grandpa's voice in the back of my mind. Calm, proud, eternal. You don't fight fire with fire, Lauren. You just take away the oxygen. And that's exactly what I did. Some stories end with shouting, slammed doors, and broken glass. Mine ended with peace. I didn't ruin them. I just stopped holding them together. And when the dust settled, I finally saw who was left standing beside me. My grandfather was right. You don't fight fire with fire. You just take away the oxygen. Thank you for watching my story. If it moved you, please leave a comment and tell me where you're watching from. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories like this one, because sometimes the quietest revenge leaves the loudest echo.